Winter has come to this plane, the land cold and bitter, the mana produced from it similarly shaped. In Magic the Gathering, we have seen on a few occasions the gripping effects of snow. So encompassing is it that even the sorceries, creatures, and lands don its title. So it got me thinking, with mana so tied to the land in which produces it, could the snow super type then affect the color pie as well? A filter that changes the mana to reflect the land it comes from? Well, I do believe this to be true. And after scouring the multiverse through both time and space, I've come to see the effects the deep cold has on the color pie. This change takes form in two ways, that of the flavorful and the philosophical. So join me, intrepid planeswalker, as we discuss snow and the color pie. Flavor is an important part of Magic the Gathering, and something that it does better than most card games. The concept behind flavor is that it showcases an idea, character, or a bit of story through all of its elements. The art, card name, and even the effect of said card all work together to convey an idea, a topic I will discuss more of in the future. When we look to each and every one of the cards who contain the snow super type, we see three common themes. Those are survival, mysticism, and death, or the end of a cycle. Winter is a time of little resources and harsh conditions, making survival a common theme across cards of this type. Cards like Alpine Guide or Cover of Winter are some great examples. Take for instance Cover of Winter. As we can see, it has a cumulative upkeep of 1 snow mana each turn, as if the blizzard is pressing in on them, growing more fierce every turn. And yet through their resourcefulness, they're able to use the blizzard as cover. The name and effect working towards this idea. If they can survive, they are able to begin stacking age counters, utilizing the snow to prevent damage. The planes of the multiverse are often a dangerous place, and yet when the snow blankets the land, one must be extra cautious to survive. For if the Yetis don't get you, then the ice will. The card On Thin Ice prompts us to respect the land, for it will turn on you at any minute. The art conveying that solitude, the effect reminding us that this figure is lost for good, and the flavor text the final cue. He cursed the wind, he cursed the cold, but by stepping on the ice, he cursed himself. Now, I don't want you to think all I've seen in these places are those trying to simply survive in the frigid wastes. No, there's something else here too. I've seen the magic that lies beyond our reality, the mystical traits found in these frigid lands. I've seen the sky open up, stars gaze down upon me with colors long forgotten dancing free. There are those that tap into the mana of the land and can see the snow as something more. Those like the Sculptor of Winter or Frost Augur, the latter taking visions from the bitter frost, and a great example of flavor shaped by snow mana. An augur, for one, is an ancient Roman priest who would interpret the will of the gods through signs. In their case, birds, and in this one, ice. The card effect then represents the result of those visions. So if this priest of snow and ice can see into the veil, then perhaps it is thinner here than in other places. Winter brings with it the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice, a time when the night lasts the longest. The night, in all of its shimmering glory, holds significant mystical value, a time when the stars and moon can speak to us in ways we have yet to understand, but can feel deep within. The card Arctic Treeline showcasing the thin line between our world and that of the one beyond. The art, for instance, is more than an aurora borealis. It is rather a glimpse into the place where gods sleep. The flavor text then reinforces this idea. When the light of Starnheim shines here, every frost-edged needle glitters with the reflected glory of the cosmos. With the veil so thin, there is then another effect on how the color pie is manifested, which led me to witness how death is portrayed in the case of snow in Magic the Gathering. Oftentimes we witness the lingering dead, unable to move on and beholden to these lands, as if the cold itself has staved off death, or perhaps it is something more, a link between realms, one bred through the other forms of flavor, that of mysticism and survival. In many a frozen waste you will find angels who guide or call the dead, the Valkyrie, such as Hailstorm Valkyrie or the card Adakar Valkyrie, the latter but one reason why the dead won't stay dead long. If we dissect the card, we see why. For one, the name Valkyrie is based on Norse mythology and is said to guide the dead to Valhalla, while here it takes another approach, guiding the dead back to the land of the living, as we see stated in her flavor text, which reads, "She doesn't escort the dead to the afterlife, but instead raises them to fight and die again," which is interesting to see for white, but in these cold and forgotten lands, everyone must do their part, even the deceased. This flavor text is then backed up by her effect, which allows you to tap the card when another creature dies in order to bring it back to the battlefield to fight another day. As you can see, there are 3 reoccurring themes backed up by the flavor of cards who share this type: survival, mysticism, and death. If we were to see this deep cold take hold on another plane, you could be sure that these themes would be present as well. Now, flavor is the concrete representation of the color pie across the multiverse. But what about the philosophies manifested in Frost? While the first half of this discussion is based on evidence represented by cards, our next one is built on theory and imagination. While there are many cards with the snow type, there just isn't enough evidence to claim with certainty the effect it has on the philosophies of each color. That said, I do believe there is something here to be uncovered. If we talk about mana in its literal terms, it's something that comes from the land, and when the land is weighed down by cold and expressed through silent calm, then I believe it does have an effect on the mana it produces. Each member of the color pie in turn is affected by these traits, and a version of itself is produced, as if it's the opposite of the summer months, when life is exploding in exuberance and mana spills out in excess. In the case of white, there is a sedentary effect on the color. Typically, it's a color who is already slow to action and based in societal structure. It wouldn't be much of a stretch to state that it would shed any excess from its beliefs, opting to then focus on strengthening its core ideology, a practical version of the color that aims to survive, with a hopeful optimism for the future. In this way, white would have a strong focus on community above all else, a hunker down and wait kind of version of itself. Gone would be the exuberance and the laurels of a vibrant society, instead trading it in for a life of simplicity, of near hibernation. What's more is that religion in this case might be replaced by a more raw version of itself. Simply put, hope. A hope for the coming summer, of a time when vibrancy will shine once more. Blue is a color who is one to have an eye on the future. But in the case of snow mana, I would say that it would have no choice but to look back, reflecting on the year that has been. With winter being the end of a cycle, it would then be a time where the future is obscured. And in that way, the past becomes more important to self-discovery and reflection. Blue would then be weighed down in contemplation rather than future perfection. Blue would lean into its contemplative and calm side to an extreme, frozen as it were in time. Of course, it would still spend this time gazing beyond, but it wouldn't be looking into its plans for the future. No, it would be more grounded in the past and present. Black is the one color who can take a handful of nothing and make something of it. There is a reason we see death so integral to the lands that Black Snow Mana touches. And while this is thematic, there is something that can be learned from this. Black then leans into its resourcefulness to an extent not often seen. It takes on a primal version of itself, one that will do anything to survive in these inhospitable lands, turning to foul magic and dark deeds. What's more is that this idea behind the end of a cycle falls perfectly into Black's vision of death and its closeness to it. And while it will do anything it can to survive, it may accept death as simply another place where it can thrive. Red in this context then learns to slow down the frantic movements of its heart, to find some calm. This does not mean it sheds its impulsive or emotional nature, it's just that perhaps such notions do not come on with such ferocity. There is a stillness here, and in some ways Red can harness a contemplative nature it would have normally missed, for action done with little thought can only lead to death in these places. This does have the side effect of leaving Red feeling anxious, as if it's forced to stop its ever-beating heart. It will long for what it cannot have, and this will eat at them, but with little choice they press their feelings down, even if the effect may leave them raw for it. Green is interesting in that it's a color who finds beauty in the land no matter what, which leads us into how its philosophy is shaped by snow. In this way, green is nearly unchanged, if not revelrous in its position. Indeed, it is true that green takes on new forms, but it would be the one color who can thrive in any condition, for its body and mind will always adapt to the lands it finds itself in, just as we see with the card Rhyme Tender, which reads, "Fools view winter as the season of death, because they cannot see the life underneath." Through flavor and philosophy, the color pie is changed to suit the snow that produces it, from literal terms like that of survival to more abstract ones like that of the mystical ties to other worlds. It is a time of calm, of solitude and reflection, and in this way the color pie is forced to adapt to these traits. Humanity was never meant to step foot in such frigid lands. Our bodies are still unaccustomed to its harshness. The blanket of snow across icy hills holds us hostage, reminding us that nature is in control. Even now, as I look out the window, fresh snow on the ground, I contemplate the end of a cycle, a time where death takes the land, and how it won't be long until spring will grow new life in its corpse. Well, thank you so much for watching my latest video all the way to the end. I hope you really enjoyed it. In this video, I touched on the idea of flavor, and we broke down some cards in the process. If that sort of thing is interesting to you, then don't worry. In the coming year, we will be talking about this fascinating side of Magic the Gathering a bit more. As always, thank you so much to my wonderful patrons. And with that, friends, I will catch you in the multiverse. Bye.